I still see that bicycle behind you that I
Yeah.
that was responsible for my favorite song of yours that you never
Oh,
play anymore.
wow. That's a deep
Oh,
cut. That's a deep cut.
damn. How come you don't play that song anymore?
I do I do sometimes play it, but it doesn't it's so unlike much of the work that I'm doing now. So like I play it for myself a lot, but
Oh,
I'll do it.
you should pull. I mean, that'd be from the salon days. You should like
Yeah,
pull that
yeah.
out
I
more
still
often.
I still pull it out, but I feel like the last time I did it, it was like I did such a like a show that was just like very emotional for people, and then at the end I was like, ah, my bicycle, and it was just such a contrast, which I thought might
Yeah.
bring relief, but
But I mean,
I
it would bring like a certain like strange hilarity, like fun, like a funness to it. You know, like if you bring that, you pull it out at an odd time.
yeah, it's definitely still something that I play for myself, and yeah, I pull it out from time to time, but
Cool.
it feels better to do it on a piano than on a keyboard too. So
Well, when you actually performed it the first time I'd ever seen it, you did it on piano.
hmm.
And it just, I mean, it just stood out. It left an indelible impression to me.
Thank you. I
Great
appreciate you.
song. It's
Yeah,
just, I feel the same way about my work as well. Some of my earlier work that I just say, nah, I'm not going to perform that. You know, it's too old. And, but people say they like it the best, some of the
yeah,
old stuff. So,
yeah.
yeah. So I say, yeah, I got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, it still gets played. Just
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the shows that I've been doing lately are more like thematic, I guess, and it just
Yeah. Yeah. I
hasn't.
wanted to ask you about that because I was checking out some of your bio, and
Yeah.
uh, I see you're in this New York Voices program,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted you to tell me, um, explain what this concept of otherland is.
Yeah. So I describe Otherland as a multidisciplinary grief ritual um, that is centered around a collection of chamber folk songs that were written in the years that I was coming out of like a multi-year long writer's block that followed my mother and my grandmother's transition, um, and the grief kind of set me on this path of learning how to love myself um, and trying to find like radical self acceptance a in a country and a time that never really embraced people who had shared experiences of mine. And I think it was like the losing of my like as an immigrant to lose a mother and a grandma, as an immigrant, as an adoptee to lose a mother and a grandmother, like there were layers to it. It's not just like that painful grief that you experience from losing a loved one, but it was also like a feeling of disconnect from like motherland too. So initially this project was called Motherland, and there was like a slash between the M and the O.
Interesting.
Yeah. Um,
So you just took the M away and called it otherland, and because it was something else.
yeah, because I thought this was like a way for me to honor my, like, when I initially set out to do this project, like, I thought this was a way to honor them. And like, the more I wrote, the more I got into the songs, the more I realized, like, of course, who I am, and I'm deeply impacted by the love that they gave me. But I just realized like the healing was more about me,
Mm,
um, and it was like grief was a catalyst for me to turn to heal like inner child wounds that I had never really thought to invest time on. Um, and so, yeah, this project is essentially um, a way for not just me to find healing in the wake of loss, but to heal in community with other people who have also experienced loss in their own ways, including like losing people too early because of systemic failures, whether it's um, like getting killed by the cops or like not having good access to healthcare, COVID. Like it's just
mhm.
the pain of losing someone that you love is already so much. And then when you add on the fact that like so much of the suffering is preventable, um, it really kind of fuels this purpose to live with more intention and with more healness so that um, yeah, I don't know, that's like grief teaches us how to live, right? So
I can relate to that because I lost my grandmother, my grandfather, and my mother within a 2 year period when I was 24 years old, Treya.
wow.
So I know it was heavy.
Yeah,
This is going back years ago.
yeah.
So I can relate to that. But what's interesting is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like you channeled that grief and that loss into your art by forming collaborations. And is this a reason why you formed a collaboration with the choir or the vocal ensemble that you use on stage? What is the name of that vocal ensemble that you use or that you're?
uh, that those are just my friends. It's not like a formal, and it's like a rotating. um I mean, there are some regular vocalists that sing with me, primarily sound. Sovereign Brown is like my vocal director and has done a lot of the vocal harmony parts. And some of the other people who sing with me are part of the Resistance Revival Chorus.
That's
They're,
what I was thinking of.
yeah, but
Did
it's
you get
not.
involved with them?
I got involved with them. Gosh, I want to say in the summer of 2018. And like, honestly, I was still pretty deep and fresh in my grief. And like, as I imagine, there's like no amount of time that can pass that like,
Sure. Yeah.
that really fully
Right.
closes the wound. Like, it's just, we just evolve with our relationship to it. But I found the chorus. I mean, the timing was really just so beautiful for me because,
Mhm.
like, it, it was such a it was such an isolating experience. Like for me, I guess like some people, I don't know. It was a really the grief was really isolating for me. I actually like didn't a lot of my like relationships before didn't really last that time period.
Mhm.
And so like I had lost like a fair amount of friends at that time and then found myself um
To me, I feel like you've gone through a transformative change since I had last seen you. And
yeah.
that was back in 2017, where
Yeah.
that's a long time ago, 2018. I think
Mm.
you were making your album in 2018.
Yeah.
all this shit was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, on a personal level, and then
Yeah.
also like with the country,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
we were just dealing with like nonstop, and it doesn't really seem to have stopped either. Like
Oh,
just like difficult news, headlines, so much tragedy, so much loss, like after another. Um, and yeah, so the Resistance Revival Chorus was a group founded by the organizers, some of the organizers from the Women's March, who came together to protest the incoming um, administration that was like elected. The purpose of this group was to bring joy to and to bring song to organizing spaces that, it's like tireless, thankless, heartbreaking work
mm,
to constantly have to practice hope and imagine freedom and healing in a world where systems
break down
all the time
continuously.
continuously. Even still, it's like there's so much that we should have learned from like all of the lives that were lost, like from war, from like our lack of like that people shouldn't die because they can't see a doctor, or like or how many people pass because like the messaging around like masking or like how to keep each other safe during a pandemic just
It's a crazy time we live in. It's just everything is just counterintuitively upside down, and it's really hard to get a hold on things. But it's great that we have that channel through our art,
exactly.
able to express it. Otherwise,
Yes.
we'd go crazy. Just
Yes.
think of people who cannot express it, don't have that outlet. It's debilitating.
Yeah, and that's how I felt. Like I couldn't write for a few years, and it was
Wow.
really it was hard for me to be present. It was hard to listen to music, like all of it. I just and that was like my main form of expression too. Like I've been writing songs since I was a teenager. Like I've always been more on the introverted side, and it's taken a lot of work and practice to get more comfortable speaking my thoughts.
That's
Was
really interesting because paradoxically, you've come so far. I mean, with your career, to me, it's so impressive that you are now opening up for bigger acts and doing gigs across the country. So I'm just wondering, what do you think caused that change? Was there like one pivotal event, or were there any major factors that opened up these new opportunities for you to be playing across the country?
um I mean, I have definitely been lucky to have big opportunities that I have to like step into and that I often don't feel ready for when I get the call.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that I would say that there was like one, right? Because it's just like I don't think I'm on the path to a kind of overnight success. Like that's actually something that I've like maybe feared and am not going for because I'm not sure if like my mental health could withstand such
Sure.
invisibility.
Yeah. But I mean, from an outsider looking into the glass, it seems to me that since I had last seen you, you've made a big career move in an upward way, which I commend you on because you opened up for the Wallflowers in July, and that was a
Yeah.
great show. So I'm just wondering, how do you go about booking those gigs? Do you have a booking agent or a manager that does that for you? Or do you do that yourself? Or is it a combination?
Yeah, I did have a booking agent at the time, but that's not how I got that show. Or I mean, a lot of times it's just about like the relationships that I have. So I got to open up for, I think like one of the biggest acts that I've gotten to open up for was like Ani DeFranco
Mm-hmm.
back in maybe this was like 2019,
Mhm.
and that was through like a few different channels. There was a like a promoter that I had done some work with, like over the years, who got the opportunity to, like, Ani like asked her if she knew of anyone. I think it's a combination of just being like ready and available. Like I've been doing this for a really long time. I've been developing relationships with like people who are connectors.
Hmm. How do you go about doing that? Is that a conscious effort that you make, or is it just you're in the right circle of people?
Um, I think there's some conscious effort, uh, but it's really just like a curiosity of people and like a wanting to connect with people. It's not necessarily like this like business strategy of like, okay, I'm gonna like
Yeah.
go make friends with this person so I can get opportunities. It's more following the path, following instinct, taking like one step at a time. So like I got a lot of my opportunities through Joe's Pub. So like the Celebrate Brooklyn show that I did in July, opening for the Wallflowers, I was reached out to by the she was the artistic director of the Celebrate Brooklyn Festival. Her name's Diane Eber. She now became the executive director of the Egg up in Albany. But I met her during when I was a resident at Joe's Pub in 2019 with the Joe's Pub working group, and they just set up like a quarterly meeting where we got to meet different industry people. And I met her once, and I told her about my project, and like she's remembered me over
Wow.
the years. And like it's not frequent. It's not like every month that I'm getting a call from her, but like every couple months, like maybe not even that, like maybe like once a year or every other year, I'll get a message from her, and with like a cool opportunity. She brought me up to Mass Mocha, and it's just like when I go up there, now I'm meeting other people, and then now I can like create other connections that might lead to like another. It's just, I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way to like focus things more,
Hmm.
because I oftentimes feel pulled in so many different directions because I have like a lot of different interests, and then not a lot of like executive function or organizational skills that are necessary to like handle all of the admin work that it takes to
Yeah.
um
You need an assistant, Treya.
and yeah, I need I need
I need a psychologist and you need an assistant.
yeah, we could all, nobody does this alone. We all need some help,
Yeah,
some
that's
support.
right.
Um,
Standing on the back of many others, if we're going to succeed in this life and this business of
yeah, and
music.
it's that. It's like one of the things that I feel really excited about is I've been learning and studying the music of um Nobuko Miyamoto, Charlie Chin, and Chris Ajima, who
Mhm.
were artists and activists, or like cultural workers, that came out of like the basement workshop, 70s Chinatown like
That's
scene,
great.
a couple of years. And like that was like me as a folk musician really longing to connect with like roots, like musical roots. And so just like following that curiosity, following that instinct has like led me to different opportunities. It's just, I don't know.
You just follow your path organically. And
Yeah.
but now, as you say, you're trying to consolidate and trying to bring it together in a more focused manner.
Yeah, focus would be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what I really was impressed by? Your use of the loop station in
Yeah.
concert.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get that down?
It took me a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought this loop pedal in 2020 when everything shut down.
Hmm.
And I had worked with a loop pedal before, but like I'm not really someone who has a great relationship with technology. And so, what's that?
You really handle it well. I mean, I was very impressed the way you
Thank you.
started with, and you played all the instruments because you're such a talented multi-instrumentalist. You came in with the violin, and then
Viola,
put
yeah.
the viola, right? Then you put it down, then you picked up the guitar, and then you were on the piano 5 minutes later. It was just like I can't keep up with you. It's like you're all over the place
Yeah, I mean,
in a great way because not only you save on budget because you don't have to hire these musicians,
I mean,
which I know about as being a band leader for years. Like always trying to cut corners to be able to do a gig.
I love being able to perform with other people too. But
Yeah,
yeah, like
let's face it, there are logistics involved all the
rehearsals,
time.
rehearsals, and then also like I'll bring in like the band when I can get like the fee that can pay people equitably because I feel like
Yeah,
there's a lot of like um pay inequity in like the music world and like
right.
we're competing. I'm like competing with people who are like willing to play for free or like willing to even pay to play.
I know what it's all like, being a band
So
leader for like 20 years and dealing
yeah.
with all these logistics and headaches and everything.
So to be able to create, so I bought the loop pedal in 2020 when like the pandemic made it impossible um to
Hey,
safely
that was a great use of time to use
exactly
that downtime
exactly.
to gather a new skill that
Yep.
you can use in concert. And
Yep.
it's really paying dividends for you. I remember I bought the Jam Man back in 2012 or something. Actually, even before, we had gigs down in Myrtle Beach for Bike Week, and I had it in 2007. And then I used it for like about a third of the show, where I would just like turn it on and off. Kind of used it in a different way. You use it more like in an Ed Sheeran way, the way he uses it on some of his hits when he performs. You play it and then you overlay your part over it. It was really cool to see.
Mm.
And
Yeah, I haven't seen how Ed Sheeran loops, but I'm really
the way you
influenced
do it.
by Andrew Bird and Feist were like the two artists that I was like, and I got the same loop pedal that they both have.
Yeah, that was really cool. You play all these different instruments, but I think, in my opinion, and I think others have told me the same thing, I feel that your greatest gift is a gift that you claim that you never had, which is that beautiful, sultry tonality to your voice.
Hmm.
It can become arresting at times, but
Hmm.
so I used to think it was a cross between Nora Jones and Billie Holiday. I saw
Huh.
it with Felicia. So that was like really amazing. So my question is, how did you create that timbre with your voice? Was it a conscious decision that you practiced and developed over time, or did that vocal tonality come naturally to you?
It's probably a mix of both, right? Because like I don't know how much we can change our natural voices,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a way to be able to curate and strengthen certain aspects of things. And I feel like just in general, for me at least, finding my voice like literally and artistically in other ways comes from just really intentional listening
Mm-hmm.
and just having an awareness of the qualities that I admire in other artists. Um, I think, as well as balancing it with, I think the goal is just to get to a point where I am expressing myself fully. Um, and and sometimes that starts with trying to emulate different artists. When I first started to take singing a little bit more seriously, I mean, I sang a lot as a kid at home, not really like, didn't take lessons. And Didn't really sing in public, but there was something about like a breathiness that I always liked. Not like ah, but like ah, like I like that.
Mhm.
Um, I like the way it felt, like vibrationally coming out of my body. Um,
Interesting.
and then when I started to wonder whether or not I wanted to perform music more, I would just like study and sing with vocalists like on the records. I just play their records over and over and over again and try to like, oh, okay, like try to match their inflections, try to like get to their tone. I think as a kid, I like did a lot of impressions of like animals or like people around me. So there was
As a
always,
young kid, like 10
yeah,
years old.
yeah, that's like how I
Hmm.
made friends. I would just like, like imitate people. And so I think there was always like this, it was not a great way to make friends. Um, but, but I think there's always been this ability to like, or like, yeah, just a curiosity of like, oh, that's an interesting way of expression. Like, I wonder how it feels to do that. Like, can I try that? And so I think that was a way that I had kind of began to develop my voice was through listening to others, and then it's like the pendulum swings, and so like it goes from like studying other voices and what I like, which is still a part of, it's not, that's still a part of like, okay, what resonates with me.
Hmm.
um and then like swinging to like, okay, what is my, how do I tap into my voice
But that's
without
interesting.
imitating?
It's listening first, and then it's emulating, because
Yeah,
listening without emulating or doing it is only half of the equation,
exactly.
right? Because you have to implement it, you need to do it, and you need to test it constantly in order to perfect it.
Hmm.
Would you agree with that? That it's not only just because some people claim they could just listen and then internalize it and then replicate it in one attempt. But to me,
Oh,
I could never do that. To me,
yeah,
I had to perfect it. I would have to, like, if I learn a run,
yeah.
okay, because I'm old, I have like vinyl records that I used to wear out, like, spend like hours going over that run, learning it first in a slow way, and then practicing it until I perfected it. Is it similar with the vocal thing?
Um, yeah, to some degree. I mean, I would try to get like to match
The inflections and everything.
inflections. Yeah, as just a way of like it was just like a play, like, oh, like that. Yeah, let me see if I can do that. But I think it was also like my goal was never to be to copy
Yeah.
other people. The goal was to be able to like find things that I liked, and then bring them all together into in my own voice and find my own voice. um and like I guess the more I do this, the more that becomes the real quest, not trying to like emulate and necessarily like create sounds that I think other people want to hear, but to, I mean, there's a consideration for that. Like I want the messages to be received and accessible, but more than that, like I want to learn how to express myself.
This is
Right.
what the best artists do. They try to incorporate the best parts of their influences, but then they turn it into their own creation,
Yeah.
a hybrid. So, what's your approach to composing a musical piece? Can you explain how that works?
I I'm still trying to
That's
figure that
that's
out.
the dinger, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, especially because like my process really changed over the years. Like I said, this particular work came out after I wasn't able to write a song for like three years or so. And this is like I used to write like every day, every at least like come up with a new song every month. And
Mhm.
I think my songwriting process has never been super disciplined. Um, there's always been like a lot of, I mean, it feels like I walk through the world and I absorb different things, and there are certain subjects that are just like swimming in my subconscious um, over time, stories that I get from people, concepts that come up in conversation. And what I've learned is that nature is a huge part of my
Yeah.
in my creating work. So like what I'm not always able to do this, but like um I feel like the process is the most fruitful when I'm able to take a guitar on like a solo camping trip or like go into nature and just like get away from all of the distractions, like turn my phone off, like get off social media and just really be present and connect with the channels um, from where like the melodies and the messages come
Mhm.
from. And that's in and I learned that I'm most able to connect with the source when I'm in nature. um,
Now, are you journaling your ideas as they're going along? Like, for instance, I do that if I have a writer's block, or even if I don't, and I just wake up and I have an idea for a song, I say, "Oh, I have to capture that before I lose it." So I just jot it down, or have it in the old days a tape recorder, or now your phone, and you
mm.
just speak into your phone and record that idea. Then you forget about it. Then you go back to it later. Is that something that you do often?
I do have a pretty regular journaling practice, but I don't often go back to the journal entries and turn them into songs. And sometimes the act of putting it in journals, that means I've processed it, right? And so like that itch to then process it in a more lyrical sense is kind of scratched. So I'm not saying it's like it takes away from the songwriting process, but like
Mhm.
usually I'm writing songs because there's just no other way to make sense of something that is just
Hmm.
digging at me. And I think most of my writing over the last couple of years have been more journaling and less more lyrical, but I'm like trying to shift because it's a different
So you
it,
don't think that's a good thing? I take it that you're journaling more.
yeah, not necessarily for it's not necessarily great for like the production of songs, but it's important or it's good for me as a way to just make sense of things and
Mhm.
just get my mind clear.
Yeah. Do you sometimes go back and rewrite old songs or revise them?
Not often.
Yeah.
There might be, yeah, not often. Um, but for example, I sit I sit with songs a long time.
This reminds me of my other place where I live next to Bellevue.
Oh
Always
yeah,
hearing ambulances.
yeah, a lot, so many.
And
Like,
I've got a funny story to tell you. I was recording Silent Storms,
uh-huh,
which is a very haunting ballad.
uh-huh.
uh the lyric is, while I walk these city streets through canyons filled with rain, the first lyric. And then at the end of the song, I play the last chord, and then this ambulance comes in.
Wow.
It's recorded onto the track,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like the perfect ending
Wow.
because it actually fit the song. So I kept it in,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's on the record. So sometimes those fortunate accidents happen.
Yeah, yeah, you never know.
I've heard that so many times with writers and musicians that they're recording and they have a mishap.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out to be like the best serendipity of all.
Yeah, exactly.
And they say,
Like
no,
the
keep
best
that
part.
in, keep the mistake in. The
Yeah,
mistakes are where the magic happens.
yeah,
I've heard that so many times, but it's
yeah.
true.
And that's why it's good to have like a to work with a producer who can like remind you of that because
Yeah.
yeah, for like the last album that I was making, like I come with my own ideas of like what I want. And
Mhm.
oftentimes like the cracks in the voice or like that like off color note is not what I'm like, no, I got to do it again. But like working with Kaki on the last album, she was like, no, like that's it. Like
Put you in your
it.
place. She said,
Yeah,
no, that's where the magic is. That crack, that imperfection is
yeah.
what's making this
Human,
fly, you know,
beautiful. Yeah.
beautiful, you know,
No,
beautiful imperfections,
exactly.
fitting in the music.
Yeah.
We cannot be objective about sometimes as writers and as creators because we're too close to it. We need a producer or someone with a very honed objective ear to say, listen, that's magic right there. Keep that
Mhm.
in.
Yeah.
This is interesting. If you could define what a perfect routine day would be for Treya, how
Hmm.
would that day go? Name the things that you'd be doing.
Yeah, I'm struggling because like I have been trying to build my routine and today has not been so good with that. But in an ideal world, I would um, wake up, I take some herbs
Mm-hmm.
from some like traditional Chinese medicine herbs, uh, and then I go brush my teeth, do my face skincare. I'll stretch for like 30, 40 minutes if I have the time. And then
Mm-hmm.
that would go into meditation. Um, and then at some point I would like write after that. Um, and while journaling, I would like make a cup of tea,
Mm-hmm.
light a
Yeah.
candle
So this is a routine that you try to do as much as possible.
as much as possible. I feel like these are the things that help me feel the most grounded and in tune. And so, but that's just like what I want to incorporate more is like playing music for myself, and just playing as a way to connect because I'm recognizing as especially as this has become like my full-time thing that like I'm mostly just writing for something or like I'm practicing for a gig or I'm playing and it's just there's just so the
You only have so much bandwidth to be able to accomplish the things that you do, but you want more of me time to just delve into the art, the creative process of the writing,
yeah
rather than writing
without
for something.
without an expectation to produce or like that it has to be productive but
Mhm.
just as a way to like feel connected with myself and just to like process
Yeah.
to be present like I don't know capitalism doesn't really give us that space and
But so many musicians would say that you have very good problems now because that you have enough work where you have the problem and you have the limitation that you don't have the time to write for yourself, that you're always writing for a project. People would give a lot to be in that position.
I think it makes it challenging so I got dropped from a pretty big project this week that has kind of sent me into a little bit of a spiral
Sorry to
and
hear that.
yeah, it happens. But I think what I recognize in that is like because I spend so little time making music for myself, I'm putting myself into the work that I'm making for others. And so when that work becomes rejected, it's not, oh, it's not personal, it's just work. Like that feels like a personal rejection of me and
Yeah.
my spirit. And so
Hmm.
like that's why, I mean, yes, of course, I'm so fortunate that like I have all this time and space to be able to do that. But without the balance to do music for myself for no other purpose, it just puts me at risk for unnecessary devastation. um, yeah, I don't know, because like music has become,
I tend to personalize things too.
yeah,
Even if I know intellectually I should not do that, I take it hard sometimes when I get rejected from a project or my song is rejected, etc.
yeah,
And I'm trying to deal with that in a better way,
yeah.
but it's not always easy.
But it's like if I was really grounded in my practice of like playing for myself and without trying to like be productive with it, then I could just be like, yeah, okay, they didn't like it. It's not personal. It
Yeah.
like logistically didn't line up, and no sweat off my back. Like I'll just keep trying. Um,
Hmm.
so
Good that you're aware of that and you can perhaps bring more personal writing into your life without it being, you feel like you're getting in the way of yourself.
yeah, I mean it's a balance too because like Otherland is like deeply personal. This is like
Mhm.
these songs were a way for me to process really life altering challenges outside of my body. Like it was so difficult. I dissociated a lot. I disconnected from myself a lot in the grieving process. It was just too painful to be present. And like, I found music as a way to channel and make sense of things there. But because now, like, this has become a project that I'm developing and getting like support to continue to do, like, it's a difficult thing to be like professionally grieving, like to like
Yeah.
attach like part of my living and like covering my financial needs is connected, like the songs that I play are coming from places that I'm still working on healing, and it's a part of the healing process, and
Hmm.
not just for myself but like to create a space for others because this feels like a necessary thing to offer to people in this time when we're just like reeling from so much collective loss without really culture or space around grief. Like there's no other countries, other cultures, they have practices and like how you do this, but America, there's not, we don't really have that. Like the what practices we have are what people brought from the countries that they came from, but as a society it's just like, oh yeah, the people died, like move on. You got to come back to work in like 2 days. Like there's no like grief leave. There's no.
Yeah. There's
It
no
was.
readjustment period that's allowed. It's like
Yeah,
you have to just, okay, one day off and then get back on the horse again.
yeah, and it's just like I didn't realize how many people around me were grieving until I lost my parent, until I lost my mom. And that's when people started coming out of the woodworks of like, hey, like, yeah, welcome to the club. Like that happened too. And everyone just carries this by themselves. And it's like we don't really have the space to talk about it unless somebody else has like shared that they're going through it. And like that doesn't feel healthy, especially when we're constantly learning about like people's lives getting cut short from like gun violence, climate change, like
Uh,
they just become numbers and statistics, and like we're not meant to be desensitized to that. And I mean we have to protect ourselves from this ongoing constant bad difficult news, but like it shouldn't give us despair, but it should make us feel. I mean, it has really compelled me to dedicate my life to ensuring that I live fully and I live in harmony and balance with the earth, and that like what I do can provide that same full life for other people, like not just in like a physical sense, but in an emotional and in a spiritual sense. We're so lucky to be here. It's like the odds of everything in the galaxy is like all of that time and space, and like we get to be here now. Like that's incredible. Like we should be able to like appreciate that and fight for that.
It's really great that you're not allowing this to defeat you, but to empower you, you know.
Yeah.
And we all need to do that. We need to, I suppose, see if we can find people who share with our grief and talk about it, possibly set up small informal groups where we can discuss our pains
Mm-hmm.
and our tribulations as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's
And their
important.
joys
And
too.
our
Like,
joy, yeah, that's
yeah.
what I mean. Tribulations, joys, and just share, our life experiences so that we have an easier time to deal with our day
Yeah.
and move on. I think it really enhances everyone's life if we can do
Yeah.
so.
Definitely.
Especially like you say, that we're not set up in this society in North America
Yeah.
deal with grief. So we have to create those spaces to deal with grief.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you've been very successful in doing that. You've had to. So that's I commend you on that.
I mean, it's because of my relationships with collaborators. Like that's not something that I could have done on my own. And of course, like there are days where it's really hard to get out of bed and like to even like I mean today is not like I got out of bed for this, like
Yeah.
but
Well, I thank you for that.
yeah.
And
But it's like we're not our culture also like isolates us and
yeah.
and I think that's like strategic, right? Because it's like easier for us to be controlled, um, easier for the people in power to like maintain their control when
Hmm.
everyone is disconnected and disorganized,
Yeah.
and we need to, yeah,
We need to
find,
take control of our lives, not
yeah.
let them control our lives.
Yes. And like it is possible. It is possible for us to live in a world that is more balanced and more free. And it is the artist's responsibility to present such possibilities when the news and when the perceived reality tells us otherwise. Like that's exactly what we're meant to do, is to offer like an alternative, um, as a way, because we can't move towards a free world if we can't even imagine or dream it. So like
Right
there's no,
on.
yeah, we
You
so
have
it's
to
kind of,
dream it before you could make it a reality.
exactly.
Brings me to my next question. What do you think is the most difficult part of being an indie musician in 2023?
I don't even know where to begin with that question because it's
Me
like
neither. Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
it's all a mess, man. It's
It is a total mess.
like it's just I mean, I'm really lucky to be able to do what I do. Um,
It's more challenging than ever to
it
make
is.
a living in music.
Like there's no income from streaming,
No.
and the cost to perform keeps getting higher and higher. To tour, like the gas, travel, all of the costs are getting, like touring used to be okay, like we lost streaming, album sales aren't really that much of a thing. And
Yeah.
then like now touring, especially with COVID and like the precautions and the escalated risks, plus like inflation on travel, and people
Oh my
are
God.
like it's not as easy. People don't have as much money to spend. Like music is going out to see live performances is considered a luxury and a privilege. I think it's incredibly important for our cultural health, for us to be in space together and to share experiences together, especially around music and
Hmm.
art and performance. But like, I get that if people are stressed about like putting food on the table, they're not buying tickets
Yeah.
to see a show. And if they're buying tickets to see a show, they're spending like, they're doing it for like artists, like legacy artists or like,
Yeah. Like people don't value music anymore the way they used to. Music is more a byproduct of something.
yeah,
Um,
it's
and
background. It's like, it's,
right, it's something attached to a meme video or and it's really disturbing to me
you know,
because I remember when music was cherished,
mhm.
when people would go out and buy music. That's all you can do in order to acquire music, is you had to buy it.
Yeah. Like now you can access all of the music at your fingertips for like 9.99. You can,
Or even for $0, you can just open up a free Spotify account
yeah,
and listen and then record music that way.
yeah,
And people just don't value music anymore. We're living in a downtime where there's so much noise out there. It's really difficult for artists who have something to say to rise above the noise.
yeah.
And
Especially if you're not like savvy at marketing or like
yeah, it
I,
seems like in order to succeed today, you have to have more savviness in marketing,
yeah,
having greater talent and less savviness in marketing.
yeah,
The person who succeeds, that's why it's really, it's annoying to me. It's beyond annoying when I see these, perhaps I wouldn't say talented, but maybe not having the same amount of talent and creativity as legacy artists, where people are becoming influencers and getting millions of streams,
mhm,
but their art, in my opinion anyway, in music lacks. But they know how to work the tech and they
yeah,
know how to, market with tech and with ads to create this facade that they are bigger than they are.
yeah.
That was never possible before, but now it is.
I mean, there have always been changes in technology, and then there have always been artists that are like better at using that to
Yeah.
gain more visibility. Like at the same time, the person and the identities that I hold, like I probably wouldn't have been able to be a like working artist, creating my own songs in this, like the odds of me being able to do that would have
Yeah.
been more difficult back then. So like the fact
Pros
that
and
I
cons. Yeah.
there are pros and cons. It's definitely a lot more noise to cut through
Hmm.
because the threshold, the barriers to entry to like create an album and to distribute it are much lower now, and so it gives certain advantages to people. But like there are people in other countries who are listening to music that I make, and like that is
True.
also, I don't want to discount like the beauty of that as well. What I do wish is that the people who listen to music, I just wish that we had more conscious consumers of music, and that people wouldn't just accept that like, I don't know, like if you, I feel like people can like a song that's like coming up on some like because of the algorithm, you play a song you like and now the radio, and so you like it, but like I wish people would be like, you know what, I like that song, like maybe let me go listen to the album, let me go see like
Yeah.
other, rather than just focusing on that song as a way, as in the, or like let me go see them live, because that's like a completely different, I feel like I'm much stronger of a live performer than I am as like a recording artist.
I
Like,
kind of miss the days where you pull out the liner notes and you read about the artist and take a deep dive there. You don't really have that anymore.
I
You,
mean,
you
artists still do that. It's just the thing is like people are still doing it, but like in now you have to look for it. But if you look for it, there are artists that are coming out with the liner notes. They're like putting out the vinyls, and um I think that I trust that the pendulum will always swing back. And
Hmm.
like I have a lot of faith in some people having a hunger for music or responding to music of with more substance as the industry continues to produce and push out work with less soul. Like we're gonna see more music that's created with AI, um, or like just content creators who are like writing for the algorithms or like
Hmm.
to do like social media trends, and like that's gonna happen, like that's a reality, but like I trust that.
Going to break through that's of substance.
Yeah, if
People are
that's,
going to appreciate it for its substance.
and it's like I don't know, like I never really liked tomatoes before growing up, because they were, I just never got the flavor. But like once I had a real tomato, like an heirloom tomato, it changed my perception.
Mm.
What's that?
I love heirloom tomatoes. They're the best. They're the
But you know,
juice.
like so much of our food is like watered down, kind of bland. They're like genetically modified to be less flavorful and more like,
Mm.
and I feel like our food, our music is also like that. But like when people are able to then get like the real thing, that resonates in a way. And I really trust that like it will be worth it to to take the long and slow and intentional path of creating music and art that is real, that like changes people, that makes them remember a show or a song or how they, that made them feel like years later. Like
Mhm.
that's what I do. Like
Yeah.
I don't do that. I don't play all the time. I'm definitely not posting a lot, and like I don't like, I haven't put out a record in a couple of years, but like I know that, and I've been and I don't, it's not like ego or just assumption, but like people will tell me like, oh yeah, I saw you like a couple of years ago, and like that really changed something, and it meant a lot, and like
Yeah.
I'm here. Like I know that what I
Sure.
do has that emotional impact on people, because not a lot of people have that space to really um feel their feelings. And, and so like that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, it's
Trying to,
resonating with people when someone remembers a show from 5 years ago or 3 years ago and say, yeah, that really left an impression on me.
yeah, that feels amazing.
That makes it all the worthwhile, all of this stuff that
Yeah.
we have to go through in 2023.
Yeah.
And the challenge is getting someone who's not familiar with the taste of an heirloom tomato, getting that heirloom tomato in front of them so that
Yeah.
they'll take the first bite.
Yeah, making it accessible. And so like it's a struggle, but like I think that's, and
Yeah.
it's not perfect, but that's kind of why like I've been trying to learn more about like the more institutional routes, like getting funding from nonprofit. It's, nothing is perfect, but I know that for me, the commercial path is not necessarily in as much alignment with like my capacity and my values. And
Mhm.
I love getting paid well enough to pay my collaborators equitable living wages while being able to do like a free concert for the public. And like that comes with like
Great. That's
grants, and so it's like finding a way to still create authentic work and then also have that be presentable or accessible to the public.
But that's a challenge in itself, isn't it?
Oh,
Finding these opportunities that
it's
are
a,
out there
yeah,
in non-conventional media
yeah,
where your art, which is maybe a bit more esoteric and probably less palatable to the masses,
mhm,
could be acquired, so to speak. So I would imagine that you do a lot of research into finding grant programs and being able to place your song in a film,
mm-hmm.
or like with music supervisors,
Mm-hmm.
like getting into a relationship with a music supervisor so that they'll accept your song in a TV show, a film,
Yeah.
a video game.
Mhm.
Have you had experience with that? And had you had to learn that on your own of how to
Um,
make those gateways, so to speak?
yeah, I mean, I read a lot of articles about it, and that feels like more of like the commercial route that I've kind of been
Shunning away from.
not completely, but I'm not investing all my eggs in that path. I,
Yeah.
of course, would love to have my music in film and TV, but like there are challenges in that too, because like it was like, oh yeah, licensing is like where the money is, but like with all the strikes that are going on, like
Yeah.
that whole industry right now is like that is kind of at a standstill as well. But so
Hmm.
my way to find to bring my music into um, moving picture is doing like film scoring, but not necessarily trying to make that 100% my path, but like being able to like I scored two short films for this incredible director Jess X Snow, um, and that came out of developing a friendship and relationship. And like I'm not really trying to score for every director or like have my music be involved with any kind of project. Like it's for me it's really about like creating the most impact, and that comes from just aligning with the work where that will resonate the most. And so it's just like everything else is just like taking one step at a time and cultivating relationships that create opportunity for my music to to be heard in impactful ways.
Yeah. But again, that came through a personal connection, that
Like,
opportunity for the film score.
mhm.
You didn't like go after it, trying to solicit yourself to find that film score work.
Yeah, that's not my nature. Like, I don't know. I'm I love people, but I don't have like limitless capacity, like social
Yeah.
energy. And so it really like comes down to following like what spaces, what friendships, what relationships do I feel like I can enter with my wholeness and not feel like I have to act or perform this version that I think people are expecting, but like that I can just show up as
What's a music residency like? Can you explain a typical day in a musical residency?
I think each residency is different. It depends on the container, the structure, where it is, the space, the funds associated with it. There are all different kinds of residencies. I just did one at Brooklyn College, and that was from like August. I did two back-to-back residencies. One was at UC Santa Barbara, and that was with Jess X Snow. And then I did like it was like a 2 week residency at Brooklyn College, and I mean, it's a dedicated time and space to explore process. And some residencies expect some sort of presentation or production. I've been lucky where like the residencies I've done, it's just more like, hey, like we believe in what you're doing and we just want you to have time and space to follow these ideas because we think it's important. Um, so for me, in this Brooklyn College residency, I was doing a lot of like admin housekeeping. And then I was also, there was like one day we did like a full day of ritual, and like my collaborators come with extraordinary musical talent, but they come with like other spiritual and healing practices of their own too. And so we just spent like a full day in a circle offering space to each other to like hold each other's grief, um, to put it in the earth, to manifest, to improv vocally,
Mhm.
um, to move together.
One final question. Who were your major influences vocally and instrumentally growing up?
Oh, growing up, I didn't listen to a lot of music.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah, it was my parents were pretty religious, and so it was mostly like classical and like gospel. Not like cool gospel, live gospel, like very like old, slow hymn type stuff. Um, but I think like one of the secular artists that I did come across was like Frank Sinatra
I
and like
love Frank Sinatra. I grew up with Frank Sinatra.
yeah, Frank
I
Sinatra, like the Beatles. But like as I got to college and was able to explore music on my own and like find out what I liked, I was really drawn to like the blues. I went to college in the South, and I just love the simplicity of it, as well as like this transmuting of like painful subjects into something that's beautiful. And that's what I feel like the blues does really well, in ways that like you can really feel connected to like what the person's going through, but it's not in a way that like gets you down. It's a way that like gets you through. Um, so that, and like I took like a popular music class, and like that kind of got me on this path of like, okay, I want to listen to music from like the 20s, and then I'm going to listen to music from like the 30s and the 40s. And so I've just kind of been like going through each of the decades trying to like learn more about like American music. And
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
I was into jazz fusion
Yeah.
back in the 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
And then I kind of dropped off from that, but I've been listening to it again recently, just fascinated with it. And, these artists who played, in these like sort of like hybrid esoteric realms.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how you developed from having just a very limited music exposure from, a young age, and then you really made up for it in college,
Yeah, and
learning all of these different idioms.
I'm still making up for it. There's so much music that I'll never, I'll never catch up, because it's just like there's this too much. So what I feel drawn to is like music that transcends time. So like music that felt good back in like I really love standards, and
Hmm.
like the way that the themes and the melodies and the chords like feel still resonate
Yeah.
today.
Timeless. The
Timeless.
American Songbook.
As well as I really love the practice of like different artists interpreting the same song and like being able to show, like, I wish we did more of that now. I know people do like covers and stuff like that, but like on a, like, I would just love to hear
Different
certain,
interpretations
yeah,
of the
get pushed
song.
through. But I think Nina Simone is a huge influence. Cat Power, um, Feist. Um, I love. I've been listening to a lot of like Nobuko Miyamoto. This album, A Grain of Sand.
Mhm.
Um, Currently, like, yeah, Valerie June, Allison Russell, like there have, I Rhiannon Giddens. I've been I never really, I struggled to find a place of belonging in like the folk music world. I think aesthetically that was just always something that like, oh yeah, you play a guitar and you sing, like you're a folk artist. And I use the term like chamber folk because like the music that I do has that folk storytelling aspect, as well as like bringing in like my classical background and like the instrumentation with like strings and woodwinds, and like just attention to dynamics and harmony and arrangements, that aren't I mean, you see that in folk too,
Yeah,
but
that's interesting that you consider yourself a folk artist because I never really considered you a folk artist. I
yeah,
consider
well,
you a hybrid artist. I considered, that you had folk elements just by having a guitar and
yeah,
being a storyteller.
yeah.
I suppose that puts you in the folk realm.
Yeah, I'm
But
like
then
trying
the
to,
instrumentation is not folk.
hence chamber folk. That, yeah,
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 that's a good term, actually.
yeah. But like, so I just hesitated to claim space in that because I mean, it is folk music. Like, I'm telling stories of the people for the people, like as a
Yeah.
way to like help promote um, envisioning of a better world
Hmm.
and to call in the changes that we need. And I think that is something that folk music does. I mean, all music, but I think folk, yeah,
Lends
it does
itself
that.
to the
Yeah,
storytelling aspect the most.
protest music, like it's like music for the people. And so it was really like listening to artists like Hooray for the Riff Raff and like Rhiannon Giddens and like people of color who are taking up space. Like there's just in the folk world and kind of um, recentering the stories of real people in America, and it's
Yeah.
um, that made me and yeah, this album, A Grain of Sand. It's like the 50th year anniversary since it came out, but like that's
Hmm.
considered to be like the first ever Asian American folk album, and so like I've been studying that and like discovering that album like changed a lot for me because I was like, oh wow, like I didn't know Asian Americans were so radical and so like anti-war, anti-capitalist, like working with the Black Panthers
Wow.
and like the
That's
young lords and stuff like that. Like I always felt like in protest spaces, like kind of like an anomaly. I didn't see that like prior to 2020, like I didn't see as much, and maybe that's my own ignorance and limited view, but like I didn't see as many Asian Americans like marching for Black lives back then. But like, and I always kind of felt like a little bit different. But listening to Grain of Sand, I was like, oh no, like people have been building coalitions with like indigenous movements, Black power movements, like since the seven.
I'm really inquisitive now to listen to Grain of Sand because,
Yeah,
like most people, I would not think that Asians would have that protest gene in them to,
no,
go out and start, banging the table, banging the walls,
yeah,
you know, collaborating with the Black Panthers and such. I
exactly.
mean, this is really, really enlightening to me that you tell me this,
I
and
mean,
it's sending me on a journey to explore this music.
that's folk music, baby. Like,
Yeah, baby.
but like, because I think it is purposeful that we don't know that history, because like I said, we're easier to control when we're divided. But like the Asian American movement, and we are definitely seeing echoes of that today in the wake of anti-Asian attacks that
Oh
escalated during
yeah.
the pandemic. Like it's kind of woke up this sleeping giant of like Asian Americans who are like
Mhm.
trying to like reconsider their place and try to find belonging and find each other. And so like there is kind of like a second wave of this like movement, but like if we don't know our histories, because it's really dangerous, like our with the model minority myth, and there are people like statistically Asian Americans cover such a wide range of experiences. There are Asian Americans who have a lot like in terms of like pay and access have a lot more proximity to the privileges that white people have,
Hmm.
education and stuff like that when you're having conversations about um like affirmative action and stuff like that. There are people who are like aligning with whiteness, and it all falls under, and at the same time like some of the most underfunded communities in this country, like in the city, people living in the highest percentages of like poverty are also in Asia. So it's like a very big, strange umbrella that makes it confusing to figure out how do we navigate this moment. But if we look at the history, even the phrase Asian American, like that didn't exist before the movements that came up in the 70s. And that exists because of the work that like the Black Power movement did to empower our communities to bring education to colleges. And this was like at a time where there were all these images of like the Vietnam War and like people who looked like us who were getting, whose lives were not valued. They were just getting killed. And like, what is that like to, I mean, I don't know. It's weird. Like we we can't we can't move forward without knowing our history. Like otherwise we're just going to
True.
repeat the same cycles. So like it feels really important for me to like to dig into my roots and to bring that because the album, all I had to do was Google Asian American folk music and this record came up. And like it feels really important for me to like share this work with other people. And I think Otherland, it was already in process, but like Otherland follows that legacy of like
Mhm.
radical envisioning and music for change, and that A Grain of Sand did. And yeah, I'm just trying to honor and continue that legacy of like building coalitions with communities who have been systemically oppressed in this country.
This is really fascinating. In 2000, I don't know if you're aware of it, in 2021, we did a whole series on Asian hate, like one after another, Asian hate crimes going on all over the city. And in Chinatown, in Flushing, we did like a 3 hour episode on it. And perhaps you talk about how it relates to music, how these musical artists, Asian American folk artists, are conveying that message or possibly offering solutions, through their music. So anyway, our conversation's been terrific, really fascinating. I loved it. What you're doing is great, getting the message out there that we need to share our pain. We need to understand the history behind who we are
Mm-hmm.
so that we can go to a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to keep creating music to bring that awareness to people to get involved in the movement.
Yeah.
It's really important that we cannot be complacent.
Yep.
Too much bad stuff going on. We need to make that change.
Yeah. And the change begins with ourselves too. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
we can't do that, and it happens in our friendships, and it happens in the way that we walk through this world as individuals, and like in the trust that everything we do will resonate.
Wonderful. Well, Treya, this has been fantastic. And I want to say thank you for expressing your thoughts and thank you for your music. And look forward to your Joe's Pub gig, which is coming up on October 26th,
Yep.
which was
Yeah.
phenomenal. I've seen you perform at Joe's Pub before, and it was always fantastic
Yeah. Thank you.
and also enlightening. And you always had different performers, different band behind you, and you always worked with different arrangements, and that was like really cool. And what I really respect and enjoy about your performances that they're never two that are alike. They're
I know, I'm
always
working on that.
they're always different from each other. Like I
Yeah.
like the way you pulled out the video screen at
Yeah.
the Wallflowers opening gig at Prospect Park
Yeah.
2 years ago at Lincoln Center,
Mm-hmm.
where you first brought out the dancers to the music and turned it into like multi-faceted art,
Yeah.
music and visual together.
That's what, and movement, like that's what
Yeah.
Otherland is. And I'm really lucky. Marie Lloyd Paspe is like the movement director and choreographer for this, and Jason Chu and I have been working on the visuals too,
Yeah,
because
we
it's
interviewed Jason Shu. You
amazing.
recommend, yeah,
Yeah, for talking
epi-
Taiwan.
episode 105. Yeah,
Yeah, that was a
that
great
was
episode.
that was cool. Uh,
But yeah, it's just like we can't do it alone. And like everybody has got to come together to
yeah, collaboration is key.
exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Trey. It's been great. All right.
Yeah.
And I'll see you at the October 26th Joe's Pub gig for sure. See us in the front row.
Sounds great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And send
Yeah.
my love to Felicia too.
We'll do.